Hey everybody, welcome back to Glenn's Garage and the 300ZX Turbo project behind me here. In today's video we're going to be assembling the whole front end of the engine. So that's timing belt, water pump, thermostat, cylinder head temp sensor, crankshaft, front seals, all that good stuff. We're going to be getting it all back together. If you're wondering how we got it apart, check out part 1 of this episode where I get everything off the car, take it all apart. Since then, we've cleaned everything up, we've prepped everything, got all the parts in, so now we're just going to start putting it back together. So here's everything they need to finish the job here. It's all been cleaned up, been painted, and see all the new parts we've got, gaskets, gasket makers. See the covers have all been cleaned up. They've been painted and clear coated, so they're looking particularly shiny. Of course, new water pump, timing belt, thermostat, sensor. Somewhere in here there's some, oh there they are, cam seals. Everything's pretty well cleaned up and restored. It's ready to go back in. Okay, so here's one of the new front cam seals. Here's the old one, so I can just double check and make sure they're the same diameter, which they are. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put some oil in the inner diameter here, so it'll help seal it over the camshaft when I slip it on. And then when I tap it in, what I'm going to try, I've been looking for something that is around that diameter, and I found this piece of plumbing, I don't know, ABS I guess it is. Anyway, it's, you can see, is great diameter wise, so I'm going to use that, and then I can tap on this and it should evenly push it into the slot or the opening in the front of the cylinder head. So we'll get the oil on, let's try that. All right, so let's see if we can place this over here. There we go. All right, so it's basically slipped in there nicely. All right, that's that one tapped in. Now the other side. All right, so next we're going to put the cylinder head temp sensor in. This is the new one. It's got a copper washer there, which interestingly the old one didn't seem to have when it came out. But anyway, it's going to go right there. So I've cleaned it all up so it seals nice. I'm going to put that in now before I put the back cover on because it just makes access a lot easier. The only issue I have right now, the pigtail, which plugs into that and then plugs in up here, is still in transit. It's not here yet, so, but I should be able to get at that without much problem and plug it in when it shows up. I don't think it's going to hold me up doing anything here. Great, I'm trying to put this in without completely blocking the camera, but you get the idea anyway. You will need a 19mm deep socket to put this in. All right, that's the obviously back cover on. There's 4 bolts, 10mm socket. So that's back in place. All right, next thing to do, we're going to put the cam gears back on. Now, I said when I took them off, they are different for left and right. You'll see it actually has an L here and an R there. So that's left and right. So left is driver's side. 14 mil socket. I'm going to look up this torque, but it's upwards around 60 foot-pounds of torque on this, so fairly hefty torque. I am going to put some Loctite. I'm using the orange, what they call it, hybrid strength. Okay, so we're going to line up. There's a keyway here and a dowel here, so that's what lines it up. All right, Loctite on there. You'll see the marks all line up still, which is good. It'd be really bad if something had moved. Now, you may remember I created this little bit of kit here when I took it all apart, and it worked well for cracking the bolts off, so hopefully it's going to work well for putting them back on. All right, now to torque it down. According to the manual, it's 58 to 65 foot-pounds of torque. All right, there we go. Had to use a bar on my little contraption there, but we've got it torqued down. So both cam gears are now in place, torqued down. This little thing worked a treat. I mean, it looks a bit silly, but it perfect. Everything's still in line, and it allowed me to hold it really easily while I torqued it down. So I'm pleased with that for a little MacGyver tool. Next on my list, gonna get the thermostat housing back in, and a thermostat, which wasn't here when we took it apart. So new thermostat, new gasket, housing's all cleaned up and polished. I'm going to put just a little bit of the gasket maker on around here to get this to stick in place. It's a little tricky, I think, to put this together because this goes up into the housing upwards, so it wants to just keep falling out. So I'm going to try and hold that in place enough to get this in place. This also has an arrow, UPR. I don't know what the R stands for, but that's the up. So that's should be basically pointing up. I don't know that it makes any difference. I don't see that it does, but Nissan went to the trouble of marking it, so we'll do what they said. Okay, so let's pop the thermostat in here. It should sit in a groove in there. There we go. And then the up. All right. All right, that's the thermostat housing in. 12 to 15 foot-pounds of torque to those 3 bolts there, and we're good. Next thing we're going to put on is the water pump. And I'm doing exactly the same thing with the gasket. I've put some sealer on it. I guess the only thing really to note on the water pump is this one fastener that is also used to attach the front cover. And that goes in here, so far right side. So other than that, you just got to put it on. Okay, so those are all snugged up. Just got to torque them now. 12 to 15, same as these here. Okay, so next in my order of operation, I've just put the new tensioner back in place. A couple of things to note. First of all, there's a flat washer, a conical washer, and then the nut. They go on that order according to the exploded diagram. So I put it on. It's just finger tight right now. Secondly, you may note there's no spring back here. There was no spring on the one I took off. There's no spring there. The spring is, from the research I've done, the spring is effectively an assembly aid to tensioning it, but it does not tension the pulley here. You still got to make the adjustments. So a lot of people have ditched it. Clearly the person before me did. I didn't order one, so I'm going ahead without it because it was running perfectly fine. Clearly, if somebody wants to put it on, they will do. I'm going to try and set it all up without. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to get the belt on next. Okay, I have the belt on. It's not slipped back all the way yet. It's not pushed right the way back, but it is actually on. I did not subject you to 20-minute video of me struggling to get this on. It was a lot tighter than I had thought it would be, even with the tensioner as slack as it'll go. But we got it in the end. So your belt, this is a Gates belt, or a decent quality belt, but what you should have a line here that lines up with the mark and the mark. So they should be lined up, which lines up with the dot here. You should have the dotted one here line up with the mark and the mark. And then down the bottom here, there is another mark. I marked it on the inside as well. But there's the mark, there's the pin. And I've crawled under and checked, and it's dead on with the V. All right, so I'm going to push it back into place here so it's aligned on all the gears. And then I'm going to adjust the tensioner, some tension on it, and then I'm going to crank it over and I'll check the tension again. I'm hoping that I can get the slack over here so the tensioner can take it up, because that's what needs to happen, is make sure the slack's here. And then I can check the tension with the old twist method on the top here. Okay, I have the belt basically in place now. So I'm going to just, that's it, fully loose. Now put it about there, and then I'm just going to snug this up. 14 mil socket. Okay, now I'm just going to get a socket on this and rotate the engine a bit, and we're going to check tension. Okay, so I've rotated it a couple of times now around. I made one little adjustment to the tensioner here, so I put the Allen key in there to hold the tension while I undid it, and then I just tightened it just a touch. So I'm looking at here right now, this rotates like that. Now there is a spec that I believe it's like 22 pounds of force, and it should deflect like 13 mils, which is half an inch. I don't have anything to measure that, but I'm going to say it's going down half an inch there from that to that ridge there. And it's, the one I always use is it won't quite twist 90 degrees without massive effort. So you don't want it too tight, and you don't want it too loose. If it's too loose, there's the risk it's going to skip a tooth, and then it's either going to be at the least out of time, and at the worst, you're going to be kissing pistons to valves. If it's too tight, I'm told you actually get a bit of a whining sound out of it. Sounds a bit like a supercharger. So anyway, I'm going to go with that for now. I think I'm reasonably comfortable. I've got that buttoned up right, so we'll move on now, and I think we're going to put the bottom cover on next. All right, before I put the cover on, I have slipped this enormous, what do you call it, washer, I guess, conical shaped washer. It's actually a guide for the belt. So there's one at the back of this gear and there's one at the front here, and it keeps the belt aligned here. If you put it on the wrong way around, it's not going to work. So you need to make sure it goes on this way with the smooth conical face at the back there. So it's concave on the front here. So I've slipped that on now. There's a little slot for the keyway. It's fiddly enough that I'll do it before I get the cover on because it's easier to see. So next, the cover. There we go. Okay, so they're all 8mm socket bolts that go around here. The only one that's unique is the one that goes into the combined fastener that also holds the water pump, and that's got a much shorter sleeve on it. But I get that one in there. Other than that, though, you know, the others are the same. So that's all the fasteners I have. There's another fastener that should go in down here, but I don't have the AC bracket on, so that's where that should fasten. Right, it's starting to look pretty nice on the front here now. That color, actually, if anyone's interested, is actually a Ford color. It's called Tuxedo Black with that slight metallic in it. All right, next for me, I'm putting on the lower rad hose, so the one that comes off the thermostat to the lower radiator outlet. It's got a rigid pipe in between the two rubber hoses, and it attaches right there, that fastener there, 12mm socket. All right, here's a bit of a different view from underneath, and there's that bracket and the bolts you got to put in. I found it easier to put it in from underneath because it's not blind that way. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get the harmonic balancer back on. I've got it here. The only thing I've done to make my life a little easier, put a mark where the keyway is, so as you start to line it up, you can sort of see where this is. Hopefully that's going to make it a little easier to get it lined up. I've cleaned up the bore. And here with just a little sandpaper, so hopefully it just slips on better. All right, so I got it. Got it lined up there. It seems to have tapped on nice and smoothly, square, so. All right, we're gonna get the bolt in now. Got a Loctite on it. 22mm socket. All right, just checking here. Yeah, 22mm socket. Okay, so I'm going to set it now at 90 to 98 foot-pounds torque on that bolt. So I've got it set at 100. Hold two more. This is a manual car, so I got it stuck in 5th gear, and I've got the handbrake on, so I'm hopeful that's more than enough to resist Okay, there we go. So I have the main crank pulley back on now too, 6 bolts, 10mm socket. So next thing to do, we're going to get the fan back on. There's a pulley that goes on here, and that just sits there and it's sandwiched. And we're going to put the fan and the fan shroud in together here. All right, I'm going to try put this in. It's a bit of a fight to get out, so I don't expect it'll be much different going in. Okay, so fans on, 10mm nuts there. You can just use a wrench for those. Those are all tightened down. The fan shroud's in place now. The bracket here. I used the plastic, one of these expanding plastic clips in this here because it was just zip tied. So that's a lot better. This is all cleaned up. Just got the water pump belt just threaded over the fan and in place there. So that's my next job, is to get the 2 fan belts or V belts on the power steering pump and the alternator and get them tensioned up. So I have everything back together now. Upper rad hose is on. I had taken the fill neck apart here so I could clean it all up, so it's back on. New O-ring underneath it and sealed it up, so I just got to wait for the RTV seal to set on that. Everything else I believe is back together. We've hooked everything back up, all the hoses, although a lot of them will get disconnected again when I start to work into the intake manifold, but it should, once I get the coolant mixed up and in, should be able to start it. Hopefully it starts after I've done the timing, and we'll check for leaks. All right, that's the antifreeze topped up here in the overflow. It's filled as much as it'll take right now until it burps and runs through the system here. I think I've got everything together properly. I think I've got everything connected back up that was disconnected. So I'll do one last check through. I got the battery in. It's been on trickle charge because it's been sitting there for a while. And we'll see if she starts. Okay, we have chimes. Must have done something okay with the timing because she starts and runs. So we'll just let her run there for a bit. We'll check for leaks. All right, so it started. I've checked through it there. I ran it up till it warmed up. Maybe not full operating temperature because I don't have that much fuel in it, but it did warm up. There's no obvious signs of any leaks right now, so I'm going to let it cool down before I poke around under there. But I'm pleased with that. I'm pleased we got the timing basically right because it started and ran. It has a slight stumble still, but we're going to be moving on now with plugs, rotor, things like that. So we'll investigate. It could just be that it's cold. You can see I've got my hat on, so it's a lot cooler out here now than it has been. So it could just be a cold start. So I'm not that worried about it. Anyway, the timing is done. That's how I did it. And it does seem to have worked okay. Pleased with that. Thank you so much for watching. Hope it was entertaining for you, or there was some useful bit of information there if you're considering doing it yourself. As always, a like, a subscribe, much appreciated for the channel. And come back, check back in again. We're going to be moving on to the intake and everything coming off, and the valve covers coming off, things like that, and continuing the cosmetic restoration under the hood as well. And yeah, and on from there. So drive safe, everybody. You have a great day, and I hope I see you back here in the garage.